Hey fam, welcome to Life More Abundantly, the podcast where we talk Black health like we talk everything else, real, out loud, and with love. I'm Dr. Eboni Haynes.
And I'm Dr. Tynisha Jordan.
We've got a lot to talk about today, so let's get into today's episode.
Let's go. Well, up first, I really wanted us to talk about Spirit Airline shutting down. This is crazy. We've never seen anything like this in history. We've seen airlines come and go, of course, or merger. We've never seen an airline just completely grounded. They didn't even get in the middle of the notice.
Right.
In Spirit fashion, they was just like, we're not going.
Right. 3 a.m.
We're done right now. Figure it out. You figure it out.
You figure it out.
Which is literally what one of their stewardess told me one time when I told them, got on the plane, told them my son was autistic. You figure it out. What you want me to do? But that's neither here nor there. Here are the facts that have been presented to us. I have some different theories about the facts that are going on. But on May 2nd, 2026, we know after a failed bailout attempt with the Trump administration, creditors rejected the rescue package that would have given the government majority control of the airline. I find that very interesting because this is the second time that Spirit Airlines has declared bankruptcy, and they were supposed to merge with another airline that fell through. But the larger context, even though we make jokes and they're warranted.
Definitely warranted.
Definitely warranted. Even though we make jokes about their customer service, I will say there was never a crash in Spirit Airlines, which none of the other airlines could say that. But all the things that we know about Spirit, if you don't know anything, if you've never flown on them, as Sherry Shepherd would say, ask your mama, ask your auntie, ask your little cousin, ask your children, because they've been on Spirit Airlines.
And consider yourself blessed.
Consider yourself blessed. But somebody in your life has been on Spirit Airlines, if it hasn't been you, at least once. They definitely feel like they were the most flown airline for their perception of low fares and being affordable travel, right? Now, I say perception because
that's the right word.
Because even though their flights were significantly cheaper than other airlines, they were the pioneer of we'll charge you for a bottle of water, a snack, movie. They have charging ports. It was definitely low for those flying.
Oh,
but
yeah.
they get you where you need
they
to go.
Got you there. You might have had to pay extra for your seat.
For your seat, for your bag, for your purse. You couldn't even carry your purse on there. They was like, oh, that's $25. And they would be like patting you down like security in a club before you could get on their flight to make sure that you didn't have anything that they were able to charge you for. So that's why I said perceived cost, because I felt a lot of times, I've flown it, I think, twice. By the time you paid all of that, you could have been on a regular airline.
That's right, with better customer service.
And so sometimes
people
are like, no, I just need to get there. Well, everybody don't have the same frame of mind. That's neither here nor there at this juncture. They grounded their planes, and it results in 17,000 jobs that were lost, including direct employees and thousands of contractors, right? So we're talking about food services. We're talking about people that clean the planes, the people on the ground. And I think that it's important for us to look at the greater impact of that, because I'm looking at it from the perspective of this is a manipulation tactic to control Black and brown people, which has been consistent in this administration. So if we add 300,000, primarily African-American women who lost government jobs, plus the other numbers that we don't know, as well as how this affects tourism, right? So if you have Black people now able to get out the country, travel all around the country, and they're able to do it at a really affordable rate, it's a class issue, but it's also an issue that affects minorities, people of color. And so I just feel like this, we talked last week about gerrymandering. This administration is making it very, very clear the Voting Rights Act, all these restrictions that are impacting our community, especially economically. And as Black people, we got to have some hard conversations on how we're going to support each other with all of these massive things happening.
Yeah,
What are your
I
thoughts?
agree with you. I was not surprised when I heard that the Trump administration offered money to help bail out Spirit Airlines, but it came with strings,
Of course.
right? And so the government wanted majority control. I think it's a far departure from what we've seen with the past administrations, where there was the offer of a bailout, but it did not come with this desire for government control.
Gotcha.
But that is, par for the course for this administration. The
Uh-huh.
Trump administration wants to control everything.
Yeah.
They want their hands to be on everything. So I wasn't surprised by that. I'm glad that the creditors rejected the rescue
Uh-huh.
package
Uh-huh.
because of that. I do appreciate the fact that Delta Airlines and many of the other airlines have opened up pathways for Spirit employees to come on board with them. Of course, they're not going to be able to absorb all of these 17,000 jobs, but at least you do see them making an attempt to offer positions to all different types of airline staff. However, I think we also can't ignore the fact that there is going to be, if there's nothing that interrupts this administration's trajectory, there is going to be a situation where the airlines, all of the airlines are going to have to make some tough decisions.
Uh-huh.
Because from an economic perspective, you're going to have fewer people traveling.
Correct.
When you have people who are losing their jobs in
Yes.
other sectors, so many people losing their jobs in other
Uh-huh.
sectors, people are not going to spend any discretionary income that they
Yeah.
have. And a lot of people do spend their income on travel. So if you have individuals who are pulling back their dollars in travel, then although all of these airlines are making job opportunities available to these Spirit employees, all of them are going to face a situation where they may have to lay off folks because people are not traveling. I tried to fly to DC a few weeks ago and the ticket was almost $1,000
Right.
to go
Insane.
to DC from
Right.
Atlanta, like one major airport to another major airport. Unheard of. But you have the situation with higher gas prices, high tariffs, and all of the other
Uh-huh.
challenges that are facing the US. So kudos to all of those airlines who are picking up the Spirit employees. But I think, got to be really honest about where we're going. And I think the airlines collectively have to be willing to stand up to this administration and say the hard thing that nobody wants to say.
And when you bring up the point about other airlines, one of the articles I read about this in terms of economic impact is that what Spirit did was provide or leverage a more competitive market.
Hmm.
The financiers say that even though it seemed to me I didn't see prices going down on the other airlines, but there still was that alternative. And so if we
Hmm.
don't have an alternative at all, what does that do for pricing on these other airlines?
Hmm.
You're making a great point that we're going to be spending less dollars traveling, but what is the incentive for these other airlines to lower their prices now that
Right.
the major low price airline is no longer operating?
Hmm.
I personally feel that the airline industry is one of the least competitive markets that exists in terms of how we spend our dollars, right? We can choose between Walmart or Amazon or all these other companies that are issues in and of itself, but you may see a significant variation in price. And so I think that that's something that needs to be taken into consideration as well, which goes back to my original thought about the restriction of how Black and brown people will travel, how the middle and lower class, because the middle class is not what we used to think it was,
Hmm.
will spend their tourist dollars. Um, I also, you brought up the issue about fuel costs. Don't understand how Spirit could be so affected by fuel costs that they couldn't keep up. And I'm sure I don't care what you tell me, these airline ticket prices are 10,000% markup, plus the
Oh,
luggage,
for
plus
sure.
whatever, whatever. So I
Hmm.
don't see how this is not a lucrative industry, period. But if they had to, quote unquote, go bankrupt and ground their airplanes because of the fuel costs, then why haven't the other airlines articulated that this is the same issue for them? And if whole airlines are grounding, then what about you and I who got to drive to work every day? Like,
Mhm.
you know what I mean?
Right.
When are we going to take that in consideration? Because gas keeps jumping up significantly, and employers are acting like it's not our
Right.
issue.
Yeah. I think the other airlines, the bigger airlines, probably are in a better position to absorb higher costs, at least for right now. And they also pass on some of it, if not a lot of it, to their passengers.
Mhm.
And considering the financial challenges that Spirit had, they probably were just not in a position to absorb
Mm.
bit like the other airlines were. I do also remember hearing that there was a black gentleman who was interested in purchasing Spirit Airlines.
Mm.
And so when you think about that, it definitely would have been a soul plane situation for real, right? But I wonder if after his, proposal to purchase Spirit Airlines, if it was realized that the shareholders needed to appeal to government to help
Mhm.
bail them out of that situation because private
Mhm.
individuals probably would not have been able to.
In addition to the young African American man, I think he's 29 years old, which I want to know where he got kicked like this.
Right.
But there also has been a call for kind of a co-op situation where
Mhm.
a white man is leading the movement, and they've already raised however many millions of dollars, where you and I could fundamentally contribute X amount of dollars and it be the people's own airline, which
Mhm.
just sounds absolutely ridiculous to me. This is my opinion. If the government, if the powers that be and whoever regulates airlines and airline travel and the contracts to make all the things happen wouldn't allow the government to bail out, as you say, for good reason, they're not going to allow a co-op. Like, how are, you and I just going to be like over here, it's from Bankhead, like, here go my $200 now on party. Like, it's not an open stock. Like, you're actually proposing a co-op. It's too much. Like, that's not going to happen either. Not in this administration. And a black man, I'm sorry to bust our bubbles, in this administration is not going to own an
Yeah,
airline.
but I mean, at the end of the day, really, it's all about who has the money. It's not
Okay.
necessarily about, in my opinion, it's not
Okay.
necessarily about the individual per se. I think if there was a Jeff Bezos, for example, who
Mhm.
decided that he was going to bail out Spirit and
And what
take
does
over
Jeff
Spirit.
Bezos look like?
Right. Hear me out. Hear me
Okay.
out. It because that becomes a personal transaction. Like the airlines are not owned by the federal government, right? They're
Mhm.
not operated by the federal government. They're a
Mhm.
private business
Yeah.
entity. And so private business entities can transact business however they want to transact
Well,
business.
with government approval.
Well, the same is true with hospitals, right? You can't
Right.
open a hospital unless you, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's still a business transaction. We
Mhm.
have sports teams that have ownership by different individuals, unless there's just one person who wants to own a team, right? Who has the money, the cash flow to be able to own the team outright. But usually sports teams are owned by multiple individuals and
Mhm.
those individuals look differently, right? And so from that perspective, it's all business. It's all business. And for me, it's not even about the challenge of getting into the market because Spirit is already in the market.
Mhm.
So if you have an individual who wants to buy out a Spirit,
Mhm.
they can, as long as the shareholders are okay with it, then they can buy out Spirit. But what we have seen, and I think this is where you're really going, is that the government has been unusually interested in business transactions where they really should just allow the business to do their thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So when we think about what has happened with the Trump administration not liking things that have been on certain networks and then them putting pressure on the
Okay.
networks. That's one side of it. But then you also do have the administration, any presidential administration that can say, okay, if two companies merge, then now you're talking about creating a monopoly and we're
Right.
trying to control that. I don't think that's the same situation with Spirit,
No,
right?
definitely not.
Someone bailing
Because there's
Spirit
a
out is not going
monopoly,
to create
right.
a
It's not
monopoly
gonna
in the
create a
market.
monopoly. But, even though this is apples and oranges, it's still fruit, right? When you say if you have the money, right, we see how difficult it has been to maintain an African American owned network. right? From Bill Cosby years ago trying to buy ABC and that wasn't permitted, to Oprah finally having the Oprah Winfrey Network, which exists but is in oblivion somewhere. We don't really utilize it. To BET now being bought out yet again by another non-Black entity, including which is now called Paramount, and Black programming like Real Housewives, which you can have your opinion about that. But Black programming is kind of being eased on out from television viewership, creating more unemployment amongst African Americans. When you
Right.
have a Tyler Perry and you have a Oprah Winfrey who are in those industries and established in those industries, unable to solidify, secure, and maintain a Black-owned network, how are you going to tell me that over here, the orange, which will be considered Spirit Airlines, or an airline period, that the powers that be, whoever they are, because these are still government contracts, even though these are individual businesses, are going to own an airline?
What do you mean by government contracts?
Because even though you're saying owning and operating an airline is a privatized business, you still have to have some type of federal clearance to be in the airports, to be in the airspace, to have all of those type of clearances. You know what I mean? Like there's like I agree that it may not be government control, but the government affects it or is involved in it in some type of way. The same way with broadcasting, television broadcasting. There are government entities that you have to work with in order to have those platforms, for lack of a better word.
I got you. Yeah, well, I think part of our challenge is that as Black people, we have not been really good about collaborating,
Okay.
especially when it comes to business ventures. Now, do I think, and I don't know the ins and outs with the Oprah Winfrey Network, but one of the things I do believe is that everything Oprah Winfrey does is a business decision that's advantageous to her.
I agree
I
with
think
that.
that she has a team of people around her who help her determine whether a business decision is in her best interest.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't believe that Oprah lost her network. I don't believe that it was a situation where she was pushed out of her
Mm-hmm.
network. I see what Oprah has done with the network as a method of her assuring that she will continue to be able to monetize what she built, even after she's gone from this earth, right? And so with that, and she's, from my understanding, she still has a whole lot of control over her business and all of that. And so from that perspective, and she's also helped build other millionaires, right? So because of
True.
Oprah's influence and putting him on, Tyler Perry is now one of the richest Black men in America. And so I do think that some people have been able to maneuver a certain kind of way in order to advantage themselves and their businesses, like an Oprah Winfrey. So I see that situation as a little bit different from the airline thing. I tend to think in these terms a lot, that when Black people want to or need to move, we have to be a lot more subversive in how we do things, because we already recognize that whatever we do, there's going to be a target on our back. There's always going to be somebody who is trying to prevent us from making power moves. And so one of the things that I think we have to get better at in politics and business deals and all of that is we got to move like white people move. So what does that look like? Well, all the time, white people don't necessarily attach their name to their business.
So true.
Right? And they allow other people to conduct their business for them. And so what would it look like if Black people started working together in the background, putting up their money, doing all the things that they need to do legally to protect themselves individually.
You're right.
But then the face of their company is someone who doesn't look like them, someone who's going to get the buy-in, someone who's going to be able to go to these meetings and say, this is what I want to do. I want to purchase this. And I have this plan for development. Exactly.
Yeah,
We don't do that.
that's a great point.
And historically, I feel like the reason why we don't do that has its roots in our history and what has been done to us to make us not trusting of each other, to make it hard for us to want to work with each other. And so until we can cross that hurdle, we're never going to be able to buy a Spirit Airlines that's going out of business or really take ownership of anything massive and develop anything massive, whether it's TV, whether it's land deals, whether it's whatever. We're never going to get to that point until we start learning how to work collaboratively as a Black community.
Well, that is a great point. I think that's a great point for us to end on this topic. I definitely think we want to hear, as we always say, your thoughts, comments, questions. And I think this is an ongoing conversation that needs to
For
be
sure.
continued to have for economic development.
Absolutely.
What's up next, Eb?
So as you all know, the Met Gala was held recently and it raised a record $42 million this year. The money that's raised from the Met Gala actually funds the Costume Institute at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It funds their exhibitions, their publications. It funds the cost of them acquiring pieces for their exhibit and for its operations. And because it's self-funded, they have come up with this Met Gala as the way to fund their work. Some of you probably have heard, though, that celebrities had been calling for protests of the Met Gala because of Jeff Bezos' involvement in seeking to be a sponsor. He and his wife being sponsors and honorary co-chairs of the Met. And reportedly, he gave at least $10 million. Some reports say it's more like $20 million, but at least $10 million to secure those titles for him and his wife. And people are protesting Bezos primarily over Amazon's labor practices.
Well, this is what I was confused about. We protest now, or no, they
are
protesting
Bezos. I can't afford a ticket to the Met.
Right, contributing to the Met Gala, and there were employees who had videos like in the marquees out in New York City protesting the Met Gala and Bezos' portion investment into the Met Gala, but you weren't protesting the Met Gala in and of itself. And what is good is it for us to be protesting the Met Gala if we still gonna shop on Amazon? And I'm gonna use we still shopping on Amazon.
Deliveries coming tomorrow.
Guilty about it, but we, maybe we need to have a shell corporation so we can buy it. But what good is it for us to be protesting Jeff Bezos about the Met Gala?
So true. Yes. Yeah. So the tickets were $100,000 per person and $350,000 per table.
And you ain't even choose your seat. And if you bought a table, you could not decide who was sitting with you at your table.
Unless you were one of the tech companies. So the tech companies, because of Bezos' involvement, they've seen record attendance at the Met Gala from tech companies, including Amazon, of course, Meta, OpenAI. So all of them purchased tables at the Met Gala this year.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah. Some people see the Met Gala, especially, its focus on art, right? So dress as art. They really see the fundraising effort for the Met attached to the arts. And so many people say it's like giving a middle finger to the Trump administration, who has done everything to defund the arts.
Isn't Bezos one of Trump's guys, though?
Yes. And that's part of the issue. Yeah.
Oh.
Yes. So that's part of the issue.
So the kingdom is falling around.
I don't know. I think the jury is still out on this. I think this is one of those situations where the tech companies are like, I'm going to keep a foot in the door over here and a foot in the door over here, because they also help fund the ballroom project.
Now, that's a great point. Didn't know that.
So the Black community had folks like Taraji P. Henson and Jennifer Lewis speaking out against this billionaire-backed opulence while not really paying attention to the everyday person's struggle. And so there was actually a counter protest that happened at a warehouse by union activists in another part of town. And so a lot of the Black celebrities attended that event instead because it was promoted as a labor is art event.
Interesting. I'm glad
Mm-hmm.
to hear that. I wish I had heard about it, that I'd seen any pictures of it or anything like that, if
That
it had been
part.
covered at all. And then where did that money go to?
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
was raised from that event. I'd be interested in knowing where that money went through
Mm-hmm.
as well. And, you and I constantly spread the message that protesting or standing up or advocating for ourselves, uniting in community is inconvenient, right? So, I'm conflicted because I do believe that we have to pick and choose our battles. And we know that, okay, it's the Met Gala's invitation only. The Black people who didn't attend, was it because they were not invited?
No, I think these were people who normally attend.
So they normally attend. So they have attended. So we're back to they're attending a gala. I don't know. Let me leave it alone, child. It's so complicated because
It's a lot to unpack. But at the end of the day, it's really great to see these celebrities standing up for the average person, the person who works in the Amazon
sure.
warehouse, who is, not getting bathroom breaks, right? It's great to see these celebrities understanding that the protest is necessary because Amazon has cloud computing contracts with ICE, which is detaining
Mm,
people that it
mhm,
shouldn't be detaining.
mhm.
Many of our
Ah,
celebrities are woke and they're using their platforms, they're using their voice, they're using their money to push against the administration and its minions.
appreciate that as well. We'll stay tuned. I'd be interested to learn more about these endeavors. And side note, y'all are billionaires. Just pay these people a living wage and come
Right.
on, man. Sometimes my Amazon packages don't arrive on time anyway. Let them people pee and eat and have a vacation and a good life. They not trying to buy $100 million yacht. You know what I mean? They
Right.
just want to not live paycheck to paycheck for working, 60-hour weeks.
That's it.
And why isn't the government involved in that, right?
Because
Be
it doesn't
involved
benefit
in
them.
that because it doesn't benefit them. But be involved with that because as we're talking about unemployment, as we're talking about, not livable wages, again, this affects the bottom line for everything that we do. If we're
Everything.
not working, we can't afford even as much as that is convenient. Let me just say it that way. As convenient as Amazon is, not necessarily that I
Mm-hmm.
like them more than anything, as convenient as Amazon is.
All right. Whoa, child.
So why don't we just get on to this week in blackity black, 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 black history?
So today we have some more uplifting news. Our first Black History moment centers around one of our favorites, Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder was born this week. Actually, he was born on May 13th, 1950. And if you don't know who Stevie Wonder is, then it's time for you to turn in your black card.
That part.
It should have been gone a long time ago. But he was a child prodigy who signed with Motown at age 11. He was blinded as an infant due to retinopathy of prematurity. Yet he became the only artist to win Album of the Year for 3 consecutive releases, despite his challenges with his eyesight. I can't even tell you how many albums he has now. I've
Right.
lost track.
Mhm.
But
And good
Stevie
albums.
Wonder. Right, exactly. So he's won 25 Grammys. And most of you, when there's a birthday, you sing happy birthday to the individual. And more than likely, you sing the version that Stevie Wonder wrote in celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday.
For sure.
And side note, Stevie Wonder was really a driving force behind making Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday a federal holiday.
He absolutely was. He also has a legacy of using technology for the blind, working with Ray Kurzweil to develop reading machines. So that's
Mm-hmm.
pretty cool too. Obviously, Stevie Wonder played his instruments by ear and just continues to be a driving force. Sis, what's your favorite Stevie Wonder song?
Ooh, I have so many Stevie Wonder songs that I like. I would probably have to say Another Star from
Hmm.
the Songs in the Key of Life album.
Is it the music or the lyrics that you love about it?
Mostly the music. I guess that's my favorite because it's got this Afro-Latin disco vibe. It's Brazilian.
Mm,
It's got, the timbales. It's got George Benson on the
mm,
guitar. There's Bobby Humphrey on the flute at the end. It's got this really great mix of the percussion and the trumpets and the
mm.
piano. And it's a difficult piece to play.
Okay.
So I respect the genius of the music. So
Okay.
yeah, it's got to be another star for me.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah. What about you?
For me, strictly wise, it is Isn't She Lovely?
Mhm.
Um, my feelings got a little bit hurt when I found out it was really about his daughter. Isn't she lovely? Isn't she wonderful? But the older I get, the more endearing that is to me. Like we can
Okay.
make him the epitome of the girl dad era. To write an
Right.
entire song and for that to still be a classic all these years later, I
Mhm.
think it's remarkable. So that's one of my
I
favorite
love
ones.
it. I love it. Okay. All right. Well, happy birthday to Stevie Wonder. So, the other thing in Black history news this week is about an opera singer named Camilla Williams. She was a barrier breaking operatic soprano who became the first African American to sign a regular contract with a major U.S. opera company,
Oh
the
wow.
New York City Opera, in 1946. She was a big
Nice.
deal. Yeah, she
Yeah.
was a big deal. And actually, before she even signed with the New York Opera, she had won various vocal competitions and she received the Marian Anderson Award in 1943 as well as 1944.
Nice. Who's from
Yeah.
Philly? Just so you know.
Yes. This story for me is so warm and fuzzy because it also shows how we're supposed to lift as we climb. Camilla Williams, as I mentioned before, won the Marian Anderson Award. Well, Marian Anderson had received a $25,000 Philadelphia Award in
Mhm.
1940, and she decided that she was going to use that $25,000 to support young vocalists. So Camilla Williams was the first recipient 2 years in a row of this award. Camilla Williams was born in Danville, Virginia.
Mhm.
Her mother did laundry for white people in the community, and then her father was a chauffeur. She actually went to Virginia State College, now Virginia State University,
Oh,
and she trained in music education. She taught in the schools, but then decided that she was going to become a professional singer, and so that's what she did. A little bit later in life, she became the first Black professor of voice at Indiana University, and she stayed there
mm.
until 1997.
That is actually very cool. And then she
Mhm,
also was, a community activist. In August
mhm.
1963, she sang the Star-Spangled Banner at the March on Washington,
That's right.
which I wanna see some footage of that.
Right,
Before the Dr. King's "I Have a Dream" speech. So, I've seen a lot of footage of that speech over the years, a lot of participants. Of course, we know Mahalia Jackson spoke and
right.
sang there. I have never seen this, so I'd be interested in pulling the microfilm for you young people who don't know what that is. That was our
Not a clue.
Google.
Right. After
Oh,
you check the Dewey Decimal System to
that's
find
right.
out
That part.
where the
You have to
microfilm
reel the thing in.
we've
I
come
can't.
such a long way.
Oh God, we've come such a long way. I could look it up on my phone when we get off just to see if she was singing. Okay, so she definitely was an advocate. She performed in 14 African countries, and she also is on the recording of Porgy and Bess to better reflect the
Mhm,
African American life. So shout out to her, and thank you, Dr. Ebb, for giving us
mhm.
highlights sometimes of people that we don't know much about and that are very
Oh, yeah.
necessary. She just died in 2012.
Yeah.
She lived a long life.
Mhm. A very full life,
Hmm.
for sure. All right, so what's up on the community calendar for this week?
This week, we're bringing awareness of the lupus health crisis in our community. For many of you who already know this, for some who don't, we just want to remind you that lupus is a chronic autoimmune disease, one of those invisible disabilities that disproportionately affect the Black community, with Black and African American people being 3 times more likely to develop the condition than white people. Never even met, and we work in healthcare. I've never even met a white
Mhm.
person who was diagnosed with lupus. Blacks are also more likely to face severe complications. Of course, we're always underdiagnosed. Our
Yeah.
pain is often not validated. And so
Mhm.
this is why there's a critical need for a reminder that this exists in our community and to bring awareness to it. Common
Mhm.
symptoms of lupus are characterized by inflammation, including extreme fatigue, tired all the time, painful or swollen joints, which sometimes, especially as we get older, people just say, oh, it's arthritis or the author.
Mhm.
Unexplained fevers is key, and then a butterfly shaped rash across the nose and cheeks. Symptoms often flare and then subside, frequently involving sensitivity to sunlight, hair loss, chest pain, and something called a lupus fog, which, if anybody's like me, perimenopause, so we get that too.
Mhm.
But if you have all of these symptoms combined or a variation of them on a repetitive basis, of course, we want you to get checked.
Yeah, for sure. Because lupus is a top 10 cause of death for Black women age 15 to 44. So
My
think
God.
about that, like 15 to 44. And all of those things that we consider the social determinants of health, those things impact individuals with lupus. So access to nutritious food, access to safe housing,
Mhm.
those things really do play a huge role in your health outcomes if you have lupus.
Yeah,
So it's really important to find ways to manage the condition using a multifaceted approach, which includes number one, early diagnosis.
right. The earlier you know, the better your treatment.
Yeah. And it's going to be important to advocate for yourself. Persistent advocacy is often what individuals with lupus find is what helps them get to a place where they can better manage their symptoms. They know that their body is going through stuff. They are communicating it to their primary care physicians, for example, and oftentimes their concerns are dismissed, right? Or they're misdiagnosed. And so it's going to be important for you to keep at it. But one of the best ways to address the challenge that you might have with your healthcare provider is to document your symptoms.
Yes, yeah.
That's the best thing for you to do. So
That's
make sure
right.
that you're keeping a note on your phone or
Okay.
written notes saying when you experience the extreme fatigue or the joint
Mhm,
pain or the
mhm.
headache. Document it. Say when it happened, what day, what time,
Yeah,
what were you doing right before the symptom came on, so that you have a detailed record that now you can share with your healthcare provider so that
absolutely.
they can see that this isn't something else that they might think it is. The documentation is going to be key for you getting a lupus diagnosis.
Diagnosis. And you bring up an excellent point because, and I'm horrible with this. I have an invisible disorder as well. But when you need to be treated for pain, especially to have that documentation can be so key. And most of
Mhm.
us are really lazy about that. But like you said, you can use your phone, you can speak to text now. And then that journal will also be very helpful in submitting documentation to your insurance carrier who
Mhm.
also doesn't want you to get the treatment that you need. So
Right.
just keeping that in mind, that's an outstanding point.
Yeah. And, if you have gotten to a point where your primary care physician is not giving you the answers that you're looking for, it is okay for you to ask them to send you to a rheumatologist. A rheumatologist is a specialist in this area. And so they will be able to take your notes
Mhm.
that you have captured and
Yeah.
determine whether all of those symptoms that you're experiencing are lupus or not. Maybe it's something else because lupus is one of those things that mask itself like other things, other conditions. And so a rheumatologist would be able to kind of put together the puzzle of lupus by looking at your medical history, your
Mhm.
family history.
Mhm.
They'll run specific tests like a CBC panel or antibody testing to really get to the root cause of your particular issue. So
Yeah,
stay at it and don't be afraid to ask for a referral.
absolutely. And if you feel like, you're just being dismissed, you know what I always say, get a second and third opinion.
That's right.
It's okay to fire your provider. I don't care if you've been
Oh,
with them
yeah.
19 years.
Because at the end of the day, there are medications that you can take, but you need them in the right combination if you
Mm,
need medication, right? And so you want to be with a provider that's going to understand your unique situation and then give you the right treatment plan, including the right medications. But they can also help you come up with a plan to reduce your triggers.
mm,
And the triggers are different for different people. Maybe one of your triggers is UV light. Maybe one of your triggers is certain medications that you might take. So if you're having those conversations with your provider and they're unpacking what your day to day is like, then they can help you determine, oh, you need to make sure that you're getting more sleep. You
mhm.
need to make sure that when you go outside, if you're going to be in heavy sunlight, then maybe we need to prescribe you an anti-malarial, or maybe, you need to pack on the sunscreen,
Mhm.
right? So you
Which
just
you
want to
should be
make
doing
sure,
anyway,
which you
but
should be doing
even
anyway.
Black people, even
Absolutely.
dark-skinned people, yeah.
That is correct. But as we talk a lot about in this podcast, stress
Mm,
is bad for our health, and stress is
across
a
the board.
trigger for
Yeah,
lupus.
yeah,
So you need to have those open, honest conversations with your provider, and even be okay if they say, you need to go see mental health
yes.
services because, this stress that you're carrying is a lot. And it's a major trigger for your lupus. Be okay with that.
Be okay with that. And know that lupus also has a support group community as well.
Mhm.
Especially if you're newly diagnosed, I think that's a good resource as well to
That's
know
right.
how to navigate that. Of course, your journey, everybody's journey is unique, but it just can be helpful to know how to manage some of this stuff.
Mhm.
Like you were saying, some of the things that you might need are immunosuppressives to stop the immune system from attacking healthy tissue.
Mhm.
That's one of the key issues. It's not just about pain, but it's about, your body basically feeding on itself and attacking healthy
Right.
tissue, which can affect your internal organs, such as
Mhm.
kidneys and so forth, from permanent damage. So it kind of all I mean, the body itself works together, but lupus is just one of those illnesses that attack what is good, and
Yeah.
it's not always visible.
Yeah. And you're not crazy.
That
Right?
part.
Sometimes, you have this pain, you can't explain the pain. You talk to your doctor about the pain. Your doctor
Mhm.
dismisses the pain, right? But you know that you're having it. You know you have these things that you can't explain.
Mhm.
You have these feelings that it's hard for you to explain. And some people might have you think that it's all in your head. You know your body better than
Right.
anybody. So don't feel like you are crazy. A lot of people who deal with lupus before they get their diagnosis really do suffer from social isolation. We don't want that for you all. So education is key, awareness is key, advocacy is key, but make sure that you recognize that we see you, even if other people are dismissing your concerns, just keep advocating for yourself and getting connected to groups that can help support you during this time.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's also interesting that we're talking about this today because Nick Cannon is actually someone who struggles with lupus and has been very vocal about his lupus journey. And he talks about being a lupus warrior when it comes to lifestyle changes that are necessary in order for you to manage your disease.
At least he is vocal about his diagnosis, which debunks stigmas about
Mhm.
diagnosis and brings awareness to diagnosis. I would like Nick, as spread out as his money is between his 20 children, to put his money where his mouth is and fund some type of lupus research, foundation, support, actual advocacy, those types of things as well.
Mhm. Yes. All right. So, tea, what's up in our herbal tea for today?
Nick Cannon, who is in the news a lot lately, but not just for having his
Again?
30 kids. On a recent podcast, Nick admitted that he has a double standard, and he's not alone, but he's very vocal about this. There's a double
Mhm.
standard for his 15-year-old twins. His son, Moroccan, is encouraged to date, but his daughter, Monroe, these children are his first children from Mariah Carey, are restricted. Critics are arguing that policing girls' behavior while leaving boys unaccountable perpetuates this vicious cycle where daughters are supposed to be afraid and protected from these vicious dating streets without giving them tools and leaving them unprepared as adults. But boys kind of have free range to do whatever they want to do. And
Mm-hmm.
this is, I feel like it's, about, well, you don't need to be in the streets this time of night or, things can happen. Well, things can happen to anybody,
Right.
including sexual assault.
Right.
Is it fair? I mean, we're boy moms, right? But we were once girls. Is this fair?
Absolutely not. The science supports the fact that this is not fair. As we know, girls mature faster than boys. So girls, and this is a generalization, but because they tend to mature earlier, their decision making is different, where girls can think a few more steps ahead, right,
Mhm,
in a
mhm.
situation than maybe a boy can, just by virtue of where they are in terms of their brain development.
Yeah.
It's also why car insurance for girls, even if they're under 25, is not as high as car insurance for boys who are
Uh,
under 25, right? There's the biology behind that. So for someone to say that it's okay for boys to not have a curfew, but the girls have a curfew because of this perception that maybe boys can handle themselves better out
mhm,
there in these
mhm.
streets, I think is misinformed. I've started my work in public health doing HIV, STD, and teen pregnancy
Right.
prevention. I've heard it all. When I
Yeah.
say I've heard it all, I've heard it all. And I have heard of daddies and uncles who have even paid for someone to have sex with their male child so that their male child
Oh,
would
yeah,
have
have a
had their first
drink.
sexual
Yeah,
experience and
yeah,
develop some experience in that area,
yeah,
but they would absolutely never do that for their daughter
right.
or their niece. For me, it goes beyond just the do you allow your daughter to date or your son to date? It's all of the things that come with dating or being in relationships with others where families tend to allow boys a lot more leeway than they do
Right.
the girls. And it's
Yeah.
absolutely not fair.
Yeah, it's not fair, it's not appropriate, and I think it is reversing us back into these specific gender roles that this generation is trying so hard not to have, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that we just need to reevaluate that. We need to be teaching all of our children what is acceptable, what is not, how to protect themselves, how to communicate their whereabouts, and their plans. Stop sharing your location with other 15-year
Right.
olds,
Hmm.
these types of things. And Nick Cannon is your business. But I don't know if we should be taking advice from Nick, period, because you are
Period.
setting an example where your son can be like a worker bee planning his pollen wherever he chooses, and that as your daughter should be accepting that a worker bee can plant his seed with her and then carry on off to 25 other women.
Yes, yes. The other piece of this is that as Black families, especially if you live in the South, because there has been this effort to ensure that in school there is very limited sex education
Uh-huh.
nowadays.
Which is
And
so
so kids
weird.
are, it is, but we're in the Bible Belt, right? Lawmakers have decided that we don't want this information taught in school. Well, who does that impact the most? I know that even in our generations, our folks were not as open about conversations
As
related
open.
to sex, right? And so it was almost like we were forced to either learn it at school, and fortunately, we had sex education when I was in school.
Yeah, but we
Um,
learned it from our friends.
but you usually learned it from your friends or you learned it from watching HBO After Dark or,
Right, right,
that kind
on
of thing,
TV,
right?
yeah,
Which is not where you should be learning what it means
yeah,
to date, what it means to be in relationship, what it means to have sexual relations with somebody. And so as parents, we have to make sure that we are educating, as difficult as it might be for you to sit your child down and have these conversations. It is important for you to be the one to sit down and talk to your kids about relationships,
Yes.
about sex, about communication, about inappropriate touch,
Yeah.
about boundaries, about all of those things. Because when your child finds themselves in a situation, the first thing that's going to come to their mind is what their parents told them. The streets can be
Right.
saying all kinds of stuff, but they know in the moment that what their parents have told them or what the loving adults in their lives have told them, those are the things that were told to save their life or to keep them protected.
Yeah.
Whereas the streets are going to tell them the things to ensure that they receive pleasure, right? And it may
Right.
not necessarily be the information they need to know that could save their life or protect them from a sexually transmitted infection or pregnancy. So we have to get out of ourselves
Yeah.
and get uncomfortable
Right.
and have the conversations.
And a conversation, I think, is key versus dictation.
Yep.
No pun intended, or, a one-sided speech, because as we were discussing, the 2 million things I remember in high school about quote unquote learning about sex was I was still a virgin and most of my friends were not. And I remember them just saying, "Oh, it feels so good. You should just do it." Right. But there was no reference to intimacy or love
Mm-hmm.
or any of the things like that. And as you talk about what you hear your parents say, the only thing that I can recall my mother saying, and I still think about it to this day, is if you have sex, I'll know it because your acne will clear up. And that's going to be what? What? And I was
So parents,
she had me scared.
have an educated conversation with your kids. Do your own research before you start telling your kids
That
stuff.
part.
Not to say that for some people their acne may clear up after they start
I
having
didn't even
sex, but
have
I
bad
don't.
acne, but it was so I was just thinking though by osmosis, my mom was gonna know that I'm having sex,
Just
right?
know that
And
fear
then,
tactic.
and so
It
the
was a
fear
fear
tactic
tactic.
instead of being able to have a conversation. So,
Mhm.
right. And then, as you say, in sex education class, I do remember all the giggles of learning how to put a condom on a banana, right? Which also sets up some unrealistic expectations, but I digress.
Yes. It's important for both people to know how to put the condom on, I think.
Well, it's important for both people, but some of these bananas have you expecting things that are banana-like. But I digress. Stay tuned for Life More Abundantly After Dark.
So much content, so much content.
And then one of my said friends, who also told me have it, was like, "It'll feel so good," got pregnant, and I just remember being devastated that my friend was pregnant because I thought her life would actually be ruined. It was not. But also my mom being like, if anybody in this household gets pregnant, they won't be living in my household.
Mhm.
And so even as an adult, being unmarried and conceiving still was a fear factor of like, oh my God, I
Mhm.
gotta tell my mom. I have to remind myself I don't even live in my mama house no more.
Mhm.
So having an open dialogue, I think, is important because, especially as teenagers are just coming into agency of their own bodies. And so
Right.
exploring what are you interested in? Why are you interested in it? What would it mean to you? As well as the safety parameters, I think is very
Mhm.
important because your
Yeah.
kid might be like, yo, I'm having these feelings and I just want to. And then we have to equip them to deal with their wants.
Exactly, for sure. Because I was in that field doing HIV/AIDS, STD, teen pregnancy prevention work. I had cases of condoms in my house at all times. My kids grew up playing with condoms in dump trucks. They just thought that the colorful things that they could pick up with the dump trucks was fun things. But it also created situations in our household where I would talk to my kids. I would sit them down and they wouldn't want to talk about it
Mhm,
because of course it's like mom's talking to us about something
mhm,
that is uncomfortable and their dad talked to them about it too. But at the end of the day, they couldn't ever say that they didn't know.
mhm,
They never could say,
mhm.
I didn't know that this might happen or that this would be a potential outcome or that I would experience this or feel that because we prepared them in advance.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so that is the best case scenario. Now, your kids can decide to do what they going to do,
Regardless of
right?
what you
You
taught them, but they have the
did it.
information. Sure, sure,
Exactly. We all
sure.
did it when we were younger. But at least they were armed with the information and they can choose to make a decision, a wise decision when they're in that situation. That's what we want.
Mhm.
But we don't want kids out here just doing all kinds of stuff where they don't understand what the potential consequences are.
Absolutely, absolutely, including consent. Just throw that in,
Exactly.
including consent. All right. Next up, we see Regina Carter, who is the daughter of Lil Wayne, says that she was rejected by several top private schools in Atlanta because of her father's explicit lyrics. So the issue at hand, when we talk about it's about the money, it's not always about the money, right?
Mhm.
Which goes back full circle. It's not about just having the money because he can pay for her to go to any school that she would want to go to, but
Mhm.
she has been rejected because of the politics of it all. Even in wealth, these
Mhm.
institutions view Lil Wayne's art, specifically the Carter series, as a hard sell for their conservative values. And this is her father. Her father's
Right.
entertainment, which is another thing. A
Mhm.
lot of times white people can't discern the difference between fact, actual moral values, and entertainment, which has come up in the
Mhm.
court of law before. And they did not want to admit her because of the perception. Half these people probably don't even know who Lil Wayne is, but she
Right.
was denied admission. And so one of the takeaways is is a celebrity tax,
Yeah.
but it's also the black tax, I think, is what we should,
Mhm.
which is what has always been. The black tax is always what? That we have to be 10 times better to get the
Right.
same value, to be admitted, to do all these things. And she quite possibly had already done all of that. And then now she has the celebrity tax, which usually falls on black people,
Mhm.
that they're often judged not by their own character, but by the white dominated institutions' perceptions of their parents' cultural expression. And this is problematic because all of our children deserve to live their own lives. And if we are
Mhm.
fortunate enough to be able to give them a stepping stone, whether it be by not accumulating student debt or getting into an institution that is preferred, we owe that to them. I'm frowning my face right now because I'm like, how many Caucasian celebrities have done
Hello.
some of the most done,
Heinous
not just
things.
sang
Right.
about, but have done some of the most immoral things, and their children went to the best schools,
Mhm.
including the president of the United States,
Took the words out of my mouth.
whose father got him into the schools that he went to that he didn't even do
Mhm.
well in, but still graduated from, and his own children. All right,
Mm.
go ahead, because I don't feel like being mad.
I'm just gonna say that for me, this is all the more reason for us to have our own, right?
Mhm.
Especially now that we're starting to see the government not put as much money into Title I school districts,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
we've always seen this move away from the arts and that kind of thing. We, I think, need to start really thinking seriously about having our own schools, having our own
Yes.
programs
Yeah.
so that we can support the development of our own folk.
So true.
I think that what this young lady unfortunately experienced was one of those situations where it really doesn't matter who your daddy is or how much money that you have. We still control access.
Mhm.
And because we still control
Mhm.
access, we are denying you yours.
Right.
However, if we had our own institutions, quality institutions, then Lil Wayne wouldn't have had a need to try to send his daughter to one of these institutions, right? He would have been able to come to his own community and place his daughter into a top tier institution that could still assure him the things that the white dominated institutions would have been able to assure her. And I think that she would have also come away with an even deeper understanding and love and respect for her culture
Mm.
that would have propelled her so far into the future. But at the same time, I think she's gonna be all right. Right?
I'm confident she's gonna be all right, right? Because her daddy is Lil Wayne, and clearly she's a very intelligent young girl who's gonna be able to pave her
Exactly.
way in society. You know, when you say that, if we had our own, then she could have chosen our own. Well, we do have HBCUs, so I'm transitioning to the collegiate level to say that HBCUs partially were invented so that we could have our own, we could be accepted by our own, we could have academic success as well as cultural success. But part of the integration process was so that we had the ability to choose, that we could choose where we wanted to eat, sleep, live, be educated. And so if that is taken away from us, we're already seeing the rolling back of so many of our civil rights. And so I think that that creates a greater problem because, yes, we have our own and we have outstanding education, but we still have to have the right to choose. That's my point. All right. Good episode, Dr. Haynes.
Yes, ma'am. It was. It was. If this conversation helped you, like it, share it with someone you love. Make sure you're subscribing and hit the notification button so that you don't miss an episode. So until next week,
enjoy life
and life more abundantly. Cheers!
Can I go back?